Okay, good afternoon. On to our next talk in Theatre Number One. So I'm Jamie McCall, I'm chairing the talks here. I work for PLB, we're a heritage design consultancy that have been in the sector for 30 years. We're really proud to be part of these talks. If you have any feedback you'd like to pass on, you can email the Museum and Heritage on info@museumandheritage.com, or you can speak to myself or Joanna later after the talk. We'll have some time for questions. I'm sure there'll be lots of questions at the end of the session, so I'll pass around the mic. And please remember that the talk is going to be recorded and will be available soon following the show. So on we go. This is Demystifying ACE. And can I present Emmie Kell, the Director, Museums and Cultural Property of the Arts Council England. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jamie. Hi, everybody. Thank you for coming. It's great to see you. Those of us who went to the awards last night might be feeling a bit weary at this moment. I know it was past my bedtime. So please do, drink your coffees, get all the caffeine, and I am going to give you a kind of run through of some of the background to Arts Council England, and hopefully there'll be time for questions at the end. So, this talk is called Demystifying Arts Council England, a title given to me by my colleagues prior to my arrival at Arts Council England less than 2 months ago. So I think this might be a tall order, but I'm going to give it my best shot, and hopefully we can make sense of this together, and I'll share with you some of the things that I have found out. So as Jamie says, my role is Director of Museums and Cultural Property, and I come from a background in museums. I've worked in the sector for 28 years in a range of different kinds of museums, large and small, also with heritage organisations. Started out in learning roles, latterly much more on the fundraising side. And some of you might have heard of a charity called Cornwall Museums Partnership. I set that up and I was CEO of that for 6 years prior to my current role. So I am passionate about the importance of museums and the difference that they make to people and to communities. And those of you who were there last night will have just seen some of the brilliant examples of people doing that up and down the country. Really, really inspiring. So that's a bit about me. I've written many a funding application on the other side of the fence. So I do know what it's like, I'm now with the Arts Council, and I'm going to share a bit with you about the background to Arts Council England and how it all works. Okay. So our roots. I'm going to split my talk into 3 parts: bit of history, talk about the now and where we're going for the future. And like all good museum people, I think if you want to understand the now, it's not a bad idea to go and have a look at the past. So I've been working my way through the history of the Arts Council. It's a thrilling read. It's called Arts and Cultures, a History of the First 50 Years of Arts Council England, of Great Britain. And as the name suggests, it's the first 50 years. So there's another 20 years to kind of bring us up to date. But I think some of the content of that book is really helpful in helping us to understand the background to this organisation and what it does. So the idea was born in wartime. So Arts Council England is probably a much younger organisation than some of the organisations that you work for. So when this building, the site we're on now, was requisitioned by the War Office as a civilian internment camp, and the hall was General Charles de Gaulle's assembly point for what became the Free French Army, other people were having a think about the need in terms of culture and the arts in the country. And this cultural wartime project was seen as a scheme which would fortify national morale in the grievous trials of war, and by others as an opportunity for spreading the arts. And by some as an opportunity to provide employment for artists whose useful outlets and opportunities were being diminished by the effects of war. So interesting to know, Arts Council England was born in a time of crisis and a time of conflict, and people really thinking about, once the war was finished, what kind of society and communities they wanted to build. The name of the first the sort of precursor organisation to Arts Council England was something called CEMA, which some of you may have heard of. So this is the Committee for the Encouragement of Music and the Arts. Initially started with a budget of £25,000, a generous budget from the Treasury at the time, and this was its mission. So CEMA wants art to be a vigorous element everywhere, enjoyed in public life, not something set apart for the benefit of privileged people. And I think it's really important to focus our minds on that founding mission, because that is a thread that runs through all of the work that we're going to be talking about we're doing today. By 1944, the Treasury had funding for CEMA had risen to a princely sum of £175,000 a year. And after the war, it was announced that due to the success of CEMA in creating a national audience, the need had been proven for a lasting peacetime body to encourage the knowledge, understanding and practice of the arts. And the Arts Council was born. And this is the person who founded Arts Council England. It was set up by John Maynard Keynes. Some of you may know him, a mathematician, probably the most famous economist of the 20th century. So Arts Council England started by a mathematician. He was a previous director of the Bank of England. And this was what he said about the mission of Arts Council England. We look forward to a time when the theatre and the concert hall and the gallery will be a living element in everyone's upbringing. How satisfactory it would be if different parts of this country would again walk their several ways as they once did and learn to develop something different from their neighbours and characteristic of themselves. And to me, as somebody from the heritage sector, that really speaks to our role in terms of distinctiveness and placemaking and community. So again, this was baked into the Arts Council from day one. But by 1951, 6 years after Keynes's death, the mission of Arts Council was being described by its then Secretary General as few but roses. In other words, a strategy to invest in only the best, whoever defines that. And some would say that kind of tension between provision for the many and a focus on excellence continued throughout the 20th century. Let's fast forward to the heady days of 2012, the year of the London Olympics, but probably far more importantly, the year that museums, libraries and archives was merged into Arts Council England. So the transfer of the responsibility for museums moved to Arts Council England as part of the bonfire of the Quangos in 2012. And MLA, which had operated for 12 years as a development agency, and colleagues in the audience were employed by MLA, had a mission to ensure that culture and creativity, knowledge and understanding are embedded in every community and available to all. So again, you can see the synergy between the mission of MLA and Arts Council England. And it's now the 10th anniversary of museums joining the Arts Council England portfolio. So a good moment for us to reflect on what's been achieved in that 10-year period. So what do we do then? What do we do at Arts Council England? What are the functions that we deliver? So I'm responsible for the Museums and Cultural Property team. And I hope that you will recognise some of these elements that we deliver in our team. So last year we invested almost £50 million in museums. The team for which I'm responsible covers all of these different areas. I hope you will be aware of the network of museum development providers across the country that we support. They provide vital support particularly for volunteer-led museums and smaller museums, and I've certainly benefited from that in my career. I hope you'll also know about the accreditation standard, which is now undergoing a phased reopening following a temporary pause in the pandemic. Over 1,700 museums participate in the accreditation scheme. We're also responsible for the designation scheme. There are currently 155 designated collections in the in England, and those are outstanding collections. And we're planning to review that scheme next year. So do sign up to our newsletter to keep tabs on what's happening with that. And we run a number of other different schemes that make a significant contribution to the mechanics and the operation of the whole kind of museum system. So things like export licensing, so movement of objects out of the country, particularly important in terms of exhibitions and loans. The acceptance in lieu scheme, really, really important. Reviewing committee of the export of works of art. Government indemnity scheme, national security advice, the cultural gift scheme, and obviously all of our investment programs that I'm going to talk to you a bit about in a minute. And hopefully some of you will be engaged in all of those already. But just to say a little bit more about some of those schemes. So the government indemnity scheme, for those of you who don't know about it, is an alternative to the cost of commercial insurance, and it allows organisations to display art and cultural objects to the public that might not otherwise have been shown due to the high cost of insurance. And each year we manage about £19 billion worth of indemnity for national museums and museums across the country. So that's a really important bit of making it all work. We work with a team of security consultants who support the National Security Advisor, and we're currently recruiting for a new interim manager to provide security advice. So again, do please spread the word about that opportunity, as our brilliant security advisor is about to take a step into well-earned retirement after 16 years of undertaking that role. And the acceptance in lieu scheme, again, that's about giving people an opportunity to offset tax requirements by making gifts or offers to museums. And it's not just art, I suppose, is my point here. And we've got a picture of Stephen Hawking here, and a recent allocation through the acceptance in lieu scheme to the Science Museum was Stephen Hawking's office and archive, including the scripts for The Simpsons. So, you know, again, a really important part of making sure that that kind of contemporary collecting and is still able to take place. So we're supporting that through our team. And I have often heard the refrain that Arts Council doesn't get museums, that it's an organisation that's set up for arts and artists, but not museums. And I would say during my first month and a half, that hasn't been the experience of me being on the inside. I've experienced people who have a genuine interest in museums and a team of people who really care. And care really deeply about culture and care deeply about the difference that museums are making. So I'm just going to share a little bit more information now about our investment programs. I'm not going to cover the National Portfolio Organisation scheme because that's currently live, and people who are grappling with that might start throwing things at me, because I know it's a particularly tense time. I have been there myself. That's all I'll say about that. But that one, the portal is closing on the 18th of May, and well done to anybody who's managed to get their application in before that date. But let's have a little look at some of the other programs, because there is a lot going on, and I think this is part of the challenge for you all, is you kind of log on to our website and it is vast and goes on forever, and trying to find the bit that's relevant to you sometimes can be a challenge. So I hope I'm going to give you a few highlights. So the first thing you need to know about is National Lottery Project Grants, and this is an open access fund, so that means there's no deadline. You can apply when you want to. And there are different kind of bands of applications, so 1,000 to 30,000, or 30,000 to 100,000, or over 100,000. And it's for accredited and, importantly, non-accredited museums. So you don't have to be part of the accreditation scheme. You don't have to be working towards accreditation to apply. And we really want more applications from museums. So I can't stress that enough. It is something that we would really like to communicate to you. What can you apply for? You can apply for a project that has a start and an end date. Projects can last for up to 3 years. We fund all types of projects that focus on museums. It can also be used to develop skills, organisational development, all those kinds of things. And we make decisions based on how strongly the application responds to the questions in each of the following criteria. So there's 3 sort of prompts that assessors will look at: feasibility and risk, how much your project delivers to our outcomes. So that's the difference that Arts Council is seeking to make. And there's 3 categories of those: creative people, cultural communities, which is a real opportunity for museums, and a creative and cultural country. And then the investment principles, and those are the things that we think contribute to you best being able to deliver those outcomes. So it's ambition and quality, dynamism, environmental responsibility, inclusivity and relevance. And you make an application through Grantium, and yes, I have experience of that system. This is being recorded, I won't say anything else about that. We have made a number of changes to our funding programs to reflect the commitment to fund organisations that are inclusive and relevant to their communities. So we do now ask for a bit more information from you about how you'll be doing that too. But just as a bit of an indication, there were 81 successful museum applications into that round in 21-22, over 1.5 million invested through that scheme, and a target to increase that. So please do look at it or collar us and ask us questions about that one. So within that, there is then a kind of what's called in Arts Council speak time-limited priority for unlocking collections. And that just means that it's drawing the organisation's attention to collections-based projects and saying we have a priority to support these kinds of projects. So again, going back to some of that myth busting around Arts Council not being interested in museums, we actually have this at the moment. It's a real, it is for you, it is for museums. And we've extended it until the end of this financial year. And types of things that we can fund through this are documentation programs, which engage local communities in researching and understanding more about collections within their local museum, collections development programs that enable museums to enhance their interpretation, workshop activity, which places collections at their heart, lots of other examples on the website. So again, do have a look at that one. There's some real opportunities, and I know these things never come at the right time, do they? And you just think, oh, it's a time-limited opportunity at a time when there's a load of other things happening. But we are really, we have people in the organisation who can talk you through how to make an application, and we're really keen to have a conversation with you about that. And again, same as project grants, accredited museums or museums outside the accreditation scheme can apply to that. Another one is called, another scheme is called Developing Your Creative Practice. And I've just noticed my choice of image here might not be quite indicative of the type of practice we are trying to develop. But anyway, for the title, you can replace the word creative with museums. So it's developing your museum practice. And again, sometimes there's a bit of a language thing, but please, be assured that these programs, unless they say they're not for museums, they absolutely are. So developing your creative practice is about professional development. And in particular, this might be one for freelancers and consultants, those self-employed, who might want to think about, applying to us for something. And there's some really interesting awards that have been made so far. The next round opens on the 31st of May. And in the past, awards have been made for digital learning, VR, computer game-driven museum exhibitions, a podcast, somebody who wants to do some work around championing public history, somebody who wants to invest in their own learning around diversity and inclusion. So lots, very varied palette of projects that come through that. And again, it's another one where we would really like to see more museums applying, or more museum people from the museum sector applying. Individuals can apply for £2,000 to £10,000 to focus on their own development. And if you have any personal access costs for running your activity, you can include those on top of the £10,000 maximum. So please spread the word about that one. Some of you may have been involved in this scheme, which has taken a long time to bring to fruition, and is the result of a lot of hard work behind the scenes with a number of different partners and funders. And it's a really great development. So this is MEND. This is the Museum Estate and Development Fund. And round 2 has just opened. So in round one, Arts Council invested £18.8 million in 31 museums. And as the name suggests, this is the kind of money that we have all found it almost impossible to get hold of since forever. This is money for fixing your buildings and all that kind of maintenance backlog that you haven't been able to address, that really can be a kind of inhibitor in you achieving the ambitions that you've got around engaging the public. So applicant guidance for round two is out, and the application portal is open for expressions of interest. It opened this week, and museums can apply for grants of between £50,000 and £5 million to carry out maintenance and improve their infrastructure. And we have had some feedback from organisations that that level is too high, and that they might like a kind of lower access. So we can't change that for this round, but be assured we're looking at it for the following round. So again, sign up to the newsletter or keep tabs on our website to find out about how these funds are developing. So that's Museum Estate and Development Fund. Who can apply to that one? Non-national accredited museums based in England can apply to that, or local authorities based in England who are responsible for the maintenance of non-national accredited museums. So that is one where accreditation is a requirement. And we recently hosted a webinar on that, and the recording of it is on our website. So again, loads of the questions that you might have around that came up in that webinar, so do check that out if you're interested in round two. If you applied in round one and you were unsuccessful, you can get in touch with us and get a copy of your assessment, which will help you understand how you can then reapply. So unsuccessful applicants can reapply. Which I think, again, as somebody who's been on the other side of a fence, it's really good to be able to have another bite at the cherry. Okay, just a bit about what happens to your application when you press submit. I thought it might be helpful to describe a bit of that. And this is an example of the process for the National Lottery Project Grant. So that's that open access scheme. So you press submit, and then kind of it goes into the ether. Probably pour yourself a large glass of wine, and then wonder about your career choices. But what actually happens to your application? You have an eligibility check, which is done by colleagues in our investment centre. Then there will be expert opinion, comment, and appraisal for grants requests over 30,000 to 100,000, and a panel assessment for under £30,000 of the full application, and between £30,000 and £100,000, and an appraisal by somebody called a relationship manager. And I suppose the point I wanted to make here is that people from across the organisation may be drawn into making comments, depending on what your application is. If it's something to do with children, young people, or digital projects, those people within those teams within Arts Council might be asked to make a comment on your application, and they might not know much about your organisation. They might not be from your patch. So it's just worth thinking about how you spell that out and articulate that in your bid. And I know that's kind of obvious points, but Arts Council is big. We are a nationally distributed team. We've got people working from Penzance right up to Northumberland. But we're kind of spread across the country, and different people get drawn in to assess different bits of projects, but generally speaking done on a panel kind of basis. And what else do I want to say to you about that? I think that's probably... Yeah, I just wanted to say something about customer services, actually. And I think this was something that I had misunderstood prior to joining, or prior to engaging with Arts Council, as much as I have done recently. We have a customer services team, and I know that when I hear the word customer services, I think of hanging on the line trying to get hold of somebody in the bank or my energy provider, and generally not a warm and rewarding experience. Actually, our customer services team are great. They will answer your phone. They are extremely well connected, and they will give you advice and support on all aspects of your application. And if they can't help you, they'll connect you with somebody in the Arts Council who can. So please don't think that they only deal with inquiries like, I can't get the application form to work. They also deal with all kinds of inquiries around where does my museum fit within, the kind of grant streams that you've got, or what does this investment principle mean in real life. So do try and contact them if you've got any queries. And I think certainly that the observation I've made since being at Arts Council is that team are really engaged. So maybe we need to give them a rebrand, because the title Customer Services perhaps doesn't communicate their true worth and value. So I said I'd talk about the future. Well, for us, the future is let's create. And this takes us right back to where we started. This is absolutely about trying to make sure that we have a country where creativity and culture is given the chance to flourish in every community. And this strategy has been slightly on hold due to COVID, but we are now actively mobilising around it. And it really is about making sure that our investment and our support and all of those schemes that I talked to you are available and active to everyone. And we are being much more intentional about how we do that now. And some of you be aware of the fact that we have a number of priority places where we are seeking to make investment, and we are using data to inform our strategy around that and look at places who have had less money from Arts Council or other agencies in the past. Before making investments, we will answer the following questions. How well does your proposal help to achieve our 3 outcomes that are set out in Let's Create? So that's creative people and communities and creative and cultural country. How do you address the priorities in our current delivery plan? I haven't got time to go through that now, but that is on the website. Please do look at it. What extent is the applicant able to demonstrate commitment to our 4 investment principles? So that's the ambition and dynamism and inclusivity and relevance and environmental responsibility. How does the proposal contribute to achieving a good balance of activity across the country? So that's the decisions we're making about making sure there's an equitable balance of investment. Would the activity or service happen without our investment? Will our funding lever additional investment? What is the best type and duration of investment for the proposal? And all of those are kind of things that you probably, those of you who are seasoned fundraisers, you would expect those kinds of assessments to be going on. What I would say is, just to reiterate, which lots of us have, at the point that lots of us have heard from funders before, please do read the guidance and check that you are eligible before you apply. Don't waste your time. And secondly, please do tell us what your project actually is. And you would be surprised how many of us have made the mistake of doing all that. Right, I'm going to answer all of these prompts. I'm going to tell them all about the outcomes and the investment principles. But when somebody then comes to read your application, they don't know what it is you're saying you want to do. So please do that. A bit more about the delivery plan then, just to say what I've already said. It covers priority places, 2 big changes in the delivery plan are the move to the priority places that I talked about and increasing our investment outside London. So it doesn't mean that we won't invest in London, but it does mean, as the name suggests, that we are looking to invest more in other places. And I suppose I'll just finish by saying we've come a long way since 1951 and the few but roses mantra of some people at the Arts Council in that time. And with this strategy, we're really trying to double down on that mission to make museums available and flourishing to all kinds of people all over the country. And I hope that this strategy is going to prepare the ground for the blossoming of museums all over the place. So that's my kind of learnings of nearly 2 months in my new role. I'm really happy to try and answer your questions. I have brought in a colleague who knows a bit more about the technicalities. If anyone's got anything specific, I've got backup. But do please ask us any questions, and I hope that was a little bit helpful. Thank you for listening.
I suspect Emmie could probably answer any of your questions, so if you'd like to raise a hand if anyone's got anything to ask. No? Oh, sorry, one at the front.
Yeah, can you just tell us a bit about what designation means, please?
Okay. So, Designation is for outstanding collections of national significance. So, as I said, the scheme's currently on pause, and there will be a review of it next year. So that question about its purpose and what it means might be something that we'll be looking at. But essentially, it is a marker of a really important collection. And what it has meant for applicants who've kind of received that designation is that there are certain, in the past, there have been certain funds that they have been able to apply to. It conveys a kind of status to your collection that can be useful in all kinds of ways. I don't know, Isabel, is there anything you want to add to that? No? So, kind of marker of importance, I guess. And it's not just museum collections. Those collections can be in libraries, archives, other places too.
Thank you. Another one here.
Just a quick question about the develop the creative practice element. Is that for individuals? Or
Yes.
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
So it's any individual within an organisation or freelancers
Yes.
can improve their
Yes.
personal
That's
qualities.
right. And please, please, please apply. More applications from museum people.
Are there any others at all, if you could? No? Well, let's just thank Emmie again for making that really clear and understandable. And remember that it will actually be recorded and up on the Museum and Heritage website at a later date for you to see. Thank you very much.